Hi there, Montessori leaders. I'm Camilla Campuzano, the community manager of Montessori Thrive and Nido Marketing. I make videos every week to help Montessori schools market their schools, grow their enrollment, and find a sense of support and community online. In this week's video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about ways that you can improve your waitlist management. Now, a lot of Montessori schools are experiencing long wait lists. This is partly due to some childcare and schooling shortages in certain areas, and also just a shortage of Montessori schools and a growing popularity and demand for them. You want to make sure that your waiting list experience is a good one so that parents aren't left with a bad impression of your school. You want to make sure communication is great. So I'm going to go ahead and share my tips for what you can do to make that waitlist experience better for parents. So if your school has noticed an increase in the amount of people you have on your wait list, that can be a really good thing. It means that you're successful, your programs are full, and most likely your school is running at capacity, which is what you want. So from a business standpoint, you're doing fantastic. But it's also important to make sure you have a process in place to manage your wait list to ensure that all families have a good experience with your school and make a good impression. The last thing you want to do is create a stressful waitlist situation where communication is not clear and just leave those parents with a negative experience with your school because word of mouth will spread. So you want to make sure you manage this accordingly. Now, some communities are experiencing childcare shortages. This is real, especially after the COVID pandemic. A lot of childcare centers and schools have had to close. Staffing shortages also means that we have smaller programs sometimes, especially in the Montessori space when it can be difficult to find trained Montessori staff. And Montessori is growing in popularity. Luckily, there is more awareness for Montessori out there, which means that parents are more likely to choose Montessori. And we hope that this continues to grow, but we want to make sure that we can also grow at a steady pace. And of course, there's limited availability of Montessori programs, particularly if you're AMI or AMS certified. It can be challenging to find multiple AMS and AMI schools within one area. So when it comes to managing your waitlist in a way that's effective, you want to make sure that you're establishing clear enrollment policies. Transparency is really key when managing your waitlist. So some considerations here. Priority considerations. Do siblings get a priority? What about families that sign a 3-year commitment? So for instance, would you give priority to families who are willing to commit to a 3-year cycle, so that including that kindergarten year? That can be an incentive for parents to go ahead and commit to the 3 years because it might push them up further up the list. How quickly does the wait list move? You might not have a clear answer, but it's nice to give parents an estimate, but be very honest and transparent about how the wait list works. What is the deadline if you have one? Be firm with a deadline. This really helps manage those expectations. If parents are late, you can just simply say, well, you missed the deadline. We apologize. You can try again next year. So that could be another way for you to manage a wait list in a way that's appropriate. Some schools do have a lottery system rather than a wait list. Of course, it's a little bit harder in Montessori when we have to balance the ages in our classrooms and the genders as well. So we can't just have a classroom full of 3-year-olds. That would defeat the purpose of our mixed age grouping. So sometimes it's a little bit trickier, but this is an option that you can have that is fair and transparent. You can explain that to families as well. Do you need to balance out certain ages or genders in the classroom? As I just mentioned, this is another point that you have to consider, and you have to explain to parents why this is part of your waitlist process. And what must families do in order to secure their spot once they are notified? So once a parent is notified that they are off the wait list, it's important for them to move quickly so that you can make sure that they do indeed want to enroll, or you can give that spot to someone else. So explain to them, once you're granted a spot, you have a week to send over the deposit and fill out the forms, and then your spot will be secure. So explain this very clearly to families who are coming in for a tour or who are interested in enrolling. Here's just an example of how we have it on our Nido site, which is our sample school website. You can fill out here. We have on our admissions section here exactly how our admissions process works, and we put here online applications are available, or feel free to request a paper copy during your visit. Please keep in mind that spaces do fill early. This creates a sense of urgency and just lets parents know that a spot is not guaranteed at your school and they might need to be joining a wait list. You can always include that there is currently a wait list. And then also here in point 3, we have just how parents can secure their spot once they're granted that. So it's important to be very clear and transparent on your website as well. Make sure parents know how to apply. Have this process on your website multiple times. You should have it once on your homepage and on your admissions section as well. Oftentimes our wait lists are a little bit more time sensitive. We want to make sure that families are aware that there is a time pressure and a limited availability. If they're not willing to secure the spot, you can always give it to someone else. They need to know this. And from a business perspective, you really want to have your programs full. This can encourage families to apply in order to have a higher chance of securing a spot. And you can also manage their expectations by being clear about limited availability. Oftentimes, what we've discussed with other schools is that the limited availability almost kind of increases the desire for parents to want a spot at the school because it just shows that your programs are successful and desirable. So it can also kind of help from a marketing perspective. Be clear about how your waitlist works. Whether families come in for a tour or they request information about a program, be clear about limited availability and be transparent about just how your waitlist works. This really helps parents understand that it's a fair process, and talk about in detail how it works, whether you prioritize siblings or you prioritize people that do that 3-year commitment. It's important to explain to parents so that they understand the process. It's just like whenever older kids are going to college, the whole process is explained about how a waitlist works because it's something that is oftentimes expected. You should be doing the same with your school. Consistent communication is also super important. Here are some things that you can do in order to improve communication with families who are on a wait list. You should be maybe having an email nurture of sorts to just make sure that parents are aware that they're still on the wait list. If you can tell them what spot they're at, that's great. Not all schools are capable of doing this because it can really be a mixed bag, whether they're going to have a spot or not. Maybe a child moves. Maybe there's an opening now for a 4-year-old in the classroom, so it can be a little bit unpredictable, but you can still explain this. Make sure that you have empathy and understand that some parents and caregivers may need more updates and communication than others, and some might be reaching out to you regularly. Make sure you're coming back with an update or just a response to make sure that their anxiety is eased, because it can be a stressful process looking for a school. This is just a sample of one of the communications that you can use. It's part of our Montessori Thrive collection, which is linked in the description of this video, where we have many resources to help you communicate with families for various different school operations and marketing processes. This is just an example of the kind of empathetic tone that you should aim to have when communicating about your waitlist. And here's just another example here of one of our resources. So feel free to use this template. And if you want the full template, you can go download it on Montessori Thrive. Another way to just help with your waitlist is to automate and track your waitlist. Using a CRM can really help you manage your waitlist, and it'll give you a glance of who's on it, how long they've been on it, and how regularly you're reaching out and checking up with them. You can create tags to identify people on a wait list and what program they're suitable for. You can also include notes on each potential family so you can track whether or not they would be a good fit for your community, because of course you want to make sure that you're filling your community with people who are going to be aligned with your mission. You could also automate email nurtures and update them on the wait list and remind them to submit an application once they are granted a spot. All of this is important for just making sure everything runs smoothly. This is just a glance of kind of what a CRM would look like. This is our Montessori marketing CRM. So for instance, you could add a whole section here on actively on the wait list, and you can maybe reach out to them, maybe let's say once a month, just to give them an update, or of course, reach out to them once they are granted a spot. And of course, having a fair waitlist is important, and showing this to families is important because they feel that it's a better experience when they can see that it's fair. Here are just some approaches for how you can ensure fairness in your waitlist process. Of course, the lottery system or random selection is always a way to make parents understand that it's fair. First come, first serve also works. It creates a sense of urgency, and it just makes parents, realize that there is a line. Whoever comes first is most likely to get a spot if this is something that you can offer at your school. Family priority, of course, explain that sometimes siblings get priority. So if you have an older sibling and then their younger sibling wants to go to that school, they are prioritized above new applicants. And of course, the commitment priority that I mentioned earlier, explain to families that are willing to sign a 3-year commitment are priority for the wait list. If you explain how this works, it really will help avoid any issues if a family is not granted a place at your school, because at least they will see that the process is fair and they will feel better if they're not granted a spot. I do hope you found this video helpful, and if it's a topic you'd like to learn more about or dive a little bit deeper into, I recommend you checking out our full 1 hour length town hall on this, where we discussed with several different school leaders across the Montessori space what they do to better manage their wait lists. It's a great watch and great for those who want to see how other schools are approaching this challenge in the Montessori space. I'll be back with another Montessori marketing video next week. Until then, take care.